The Georgia Guidestones stood for more than 40 years until a year ago when someone set off an explosion around 4 in the morning.
The explosion that leveled the Georgia Guidestones was meant to bury a secret, but it did the opposite. Using advanced AI, investigators have finally unlocked the digital ghost of the monument's creator, R.C. Christian.
The GBI released video showing the moment an explosion tore into the Georgia Guidestones in Elbert County.
They found the key to understanding his true message, and it's worse than anyone ever imagined. The AI confirmed the Guidestones were a declaration of war on 90% of the human population. This isn't a theory anymore. The proof has been found, and the people behind it never went away. The AI confirms the horrifying truth. For 42 years, the Georgia Guidestones were a source of fascination and fear. A modern Stonehenge built under a fake name, its 10 commandments for a new world order were cryptic and unsettling. Then, on July 6, 2022, an explosion reduced one of the massive slabs to rubble, and the authorities quickly demolished the rest, wiping the monument off the face of the earth. The official story was that the case was closed, but that's where the real investigation began. In a confidential project, researchers fed every known piece of information about the Guidestones into a new kind of artificial intelligence. This wasn't just a search engine. This was a deep-level pattern recognition system designed to find hidden connections in language. They gave it everything: the text from the stones in all 8 languages, the known writings of the mysterious founder R.C. Christian, the banker's records, and even the chemical analysis of the granite dust from the blast site. The goal was to see if the conspiracy theories held any water. The AI's conclusion was so shocking it has been kept under wraps until now. Truth be told, the AI confirmed the mystery is actually true. It was discovered that the 10 commandments on the stones were a smokescreen. Buried within the very structure of the sentences and the specific choice of words was a sophisticated cipher. A linguistic key that, when applied, unlocked a second hidden message. This message wasn't a vague set of guidelines, it was a cold, calculated plan for total societal transformation. The document, referred to internally as the Directive, laid out a 3-stage process to achieve the world envisioned by the Guidestones' creators. The first stage was called ideological seeding. The AI found undeniable parallels between the phrasing on the Guidestones and the mission statements of influential nonprofits, academic papers on bioethics, and even policy proposals presented at global summits. The goal was to slowly and quietly introduce concepts like sustainable population, global governance, and social responsibility over personal rights into the mainstream, so they would seem normal and even desirable over time. The second stage was crisis exploitation. The directive outlined how a major global crisis, be it a pandemic, an economic collapse, or a climate catastrophe, could be used to accelerate the plan. The AI highlighted passages describing the implementation of digital IDs, social credit systems, and centralized control over resources, all framed as necessary emergency measures to ensure safety and stability. It was a playbook for turning fear into control. The final stage, the most terrifying of all, was called the culling. This was the end game. With the infrastructure of control in place, this phase detailed the quiet and systematic reduction of the global population to that infamous number, 500 million. The AI found references to promoting and funding programs that would limit reproduction, alongside strategies to withhold advanced medical technology from regions deemed non-essential. It was a plan for a silent, bureaucratic genocide. The AI didn't just theorize this, it provided proof. It flagged hundreds of documents from real-world organizations and think tanks, showing a statistical overlap in language and policy goals that it calculated was a 1 in a billion coincidence. The Guidestones weren't a message to future survivors of an apocalypse. The AI confirmed they were a business plan for a group of elites who intended to create the apocalypse and then manage what was left. The mystery is no longer what the stones meant. The mystery is now how a secret group managed to embed their terrifying plan in plain sight, and what they plan to do now that their monument is gone. America's Stonehenge and its dark legacy. To understand how deep this conspiracy runs, you have to go back to the beginning. In the summer of 1979, a well-dressed, articulate man calling himself Robert C. Christian walked into the Elberton Granite Finishing Company in rural Georgia. He said he represented a small group of loyal Americans who wanted to build a monument. But this wasn't just any monument. It was to be a guide for humanity after a great catastrophe that they believed was just around the corner. The scale of the project was insane. Christian wanted 4 massive granite slabs, each weighing over 20 tons, arranged around a central pillar with a 13-ton capstone on top. The total weight would be almost 240,000 pounds, and it had to be a working astronomical calendar. A hole through the center stone would always point to the North Star. A slot cut into another stone would track the sun's path during the solstices and equinoxes. It was a clock and a calendar built to last for thousands of years. The most controversial part, however, was the message. 10 guidelines or commandments were to be sandblasted onto the faces of the main stones in 8 of the world's most common languages: English, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Hebrew, Arabic, traditional Chinese, and Russian. On the capstone, a shorter message, "Let these be guidestones to an age of reason," was to be inscribed in 4 ancient languages: Babylonian cuneiform, Classical Greek, Sanskrit, and Egyptian hieroglyphs. It was a message meant for the entire world, past, present, and future, and that message was chilling. The very first rule called to maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. In 1980, when the monument was unveiled, the world population was over 4 billion. This wasn't a suggestion, it was a call for the elimination of over 90% of the people on Earth. The other rules were just as disturbing. Guide reproduction wisely. Improving fitness and diversity sounded a lot like eugenics, the discredited and racist science of selective breeding. Unite humanity with a living new language and rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason sounded like a call to erase individual cultures and beliefs. The call for a world court to settle disputes was seen by many as a blueprint for a one-world government, a new world order that would crush national sovereignty. For 42 years, the Guidestones became a pilgrimage site for tourists, New Agers, and conspiracy researchers. The mystery of R.C. Christian's true identity fueled endless speculation. Was he a Rosicrucian, an agent of the New World Order, a Luciferian? The monument was repeatedly vandalized with messages like, "Death to the New World Order." Preachers condemned it as a satanic altar. Then, in the early morning hours of July 6, 2022, the debate came to an explosive end. An unknown person detonated a bomb at the base of one of the slabs, destroying it. Within hours, for safety reasons, the county government brought in heavy machinery and demolished the entire structure. The rubble was hauled away and the land was smoothed over. The world's most mysterious monument was gone, and the speed of its removal only added fuel to the fire. Why tear it down so fast? Was it to destroy evidence? For decades, the idea that the Guidestones were a real blueprint for global domination was just a theory. But the first key to unlocking the truth lay in discovering the real identity of the man who started it all. The architect of a new world. The secret of the Georgia Guidestones was protected for decades by one man, Wyatt Martin, the banker from Elberton who had helped arrange the deal. The mysterious R.C. Christian had made Martin swear an oath of secrecy, and Martin kept that promise until his death. But he didn't take the secret to his grave. He left behind a box of documents that contained the entire history of the project, including letters from Christian himself. In 2015, a documentary filmmaker finally revealed the contents of that box. The man who called himself R.C. Christian was in reality Dr. Herbert H. Kirsten, a physician from Fort Dodge, Iowa. But he was no ordinary doctor. Kirsten was a man deeply obsessed with the ideas of eugenics, population control, and the writings of Thomas Malthus, who argued that population growth would always outpace food supply, leading to famine and collapse. Kirsten's connections were even more revealing. He was a known associate of William Shockley, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist who became one of America's most infamous proponents of scientific racism and eugenics. Shockley advocated for the voluntary sterilization of people with low IQs, a policy that aligned perfectly with the Guidestones' call to guide reproduction wisely. Kirsten was also a public supporter of David Duke, a notorious white supremacist and former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. This wasn't some benevolent philosopher trying to help humanity. This was a man with a dark, racially charged ideology who believed that most of the human race was unfit to exist. His choice of a pseudonym, R.C. Christian, was also a major clue. It's widely believed to be a reference to Christian Rosenkreuz, the legendary and likely mythical founder of the Rosicrucian Order, a secret society from the 17th century that claimed to possess hidden esoteric knowledge. Kirsten was signaling that he was part of a secret tradition, a keeper of knowledge that the uninitiated masses were not meant to understand. His own writings in the box of documents confirmed his terrifying worldview. He wrote that democracy was a fraud and that the world needed to be run by a small elite group of intelligent rulers. He believed that conservation and environmentalism were useless without drastic population reduction. He saw humanity not as a species to be saved, but as a cancer on the earth that needed to be surgically removed. The Georgia Guidestones were his prescription. For a long time, it was assumed that Kirsten and his small group of loyal Americans were just a fringe collection of crackpots with a lot of money. But the AI's recent analysis suggests something far more organized. Kirsten wasn't just a founder, he was a recruiter. And the group he was a part of didn't die with him. The AI's decryption of the directive suggests they are more powerful and more influential now than ever before. The directive is now active. The document the AI reconstructed from the hidden patterns in Kirsten's writing is the smoking gun. The directive is not a philosophical text, it's an operational manual. It confirms that the Georgia Guidestones were never just a monument. They were a public declaration of intent and an advertisement designed to attract wealthy and powerful individuals who shared Kirsten's grim vision for the future. The AI confirmed the existence of the group he founded, which called itself the Posterity Foundation. Their goal was simple: to ensure their vision of the world was the one that survived the coming Great Correction. The directive lays out their strategy with horrifying clarity, and the AI's analysis confirmed that this plan is no longer just a theory. It's actively being implemented. The first phase, ideological seeding, has been a stunning success. The AI cross-referenced the exact phrasing from the directive with policy papers from powerful non-governmental organizations and think tanks. Phrases like managing sustainable population levels, frameworks for global governance, and balancing individual liberties with collective responsibilities appear with a frequency that the AI flags as coordinated. The ideas that seem so shocking on the stones have been laundered through bureaucratic language and are now openly discussed at places like the World Economic Forum. The second phase, crisis exploitation, is now underway. The directive describes using a global crisis to justify the rapid implementation of systems of control. The AI found direct correlations between the document's proposals and recent real-world events. For example, it describes a system of biometric social verification, which sounds eerily similar to the vaccine passports and digital ID proposals that emerged during the recent pandemic. The document argued that during a time of fear, people would willingly trade freedom for a sense of security, allowing the foundation to put its infrastructure in place without resistance. The final and most disturbing phase is the culling. This is where the plan moves from social engineering to biological engineering. The directive outlines a plan to use the established control grid to enforce the 500 million population limit. It calls for adding sterilizing agents to water supplies in non-productive regions and promoting gene editing technologies that could prevent certain populations from reproducing. It describes a world where the right to have a child is not a human right, but a privilege granted by the state based on one's genetic and social fitness score. What makes this more than just a conspiracy theory is the final piece of the AI's analysis. It scanned the financial records and known associations of Herbert Kirsten and the Posterity Foundation. It found direct financial links between his group and the founders of major pharmaceutical companies, powerful figures in global banking, and even owners of media conglomerates. The people with the power to implement the directive are the very same people who funded its creation. The plan wasn't just written down, it was financed. The destruction of the Guidestones was not the act of a random vandal. The AI's analysis of the explosive residue suggests a highly sophisticated military-grade device was used. The conclusion? It was an inside job. The monument had served its purpose. It had planted the seeds of the idea. Now that the plan was in motion, the physical evidence had become a liability. They destroyed their own monument to cover their tracks, confident that their real work could continue in the shadows. The stones are gone, but the plan remains. The AI has confirmed the horrifying truth. Was the destruction of the Guidestones a victory, or did it just allow the architects to go back into the shadows? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe.